love telling my story of how I got into real estate in the first place, because a lot of people think I had this vision and I knew exactly what I was going to build. And I meet so many people that are on the fence. Should I get started in real estate? Should I not? When I first started, I had to actually know real estate investing wasn't even on my radar. It's right now, as hopefully we come out of COVID, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people in trouble. And one of the things, I teach this, Michael, is that I don't really like the term real estate investor. I consider us problem solvers. One of my favorite things is helping people in pre-foreclosure. It's something called tax liens and deeds.
I love multifamily. I love real estate investment. Team is very important.
Things will sometimes go wrong on real estate deals. It's just the nature of the industry.
We've considered investments together. We work with many of the same people.
And I'm forming, partnerships with people on all different levels, and it's a win-win-win for everybody that way.
Step by step, I planned out what I was going to do. I planned on going sailing, so I knew what I needed to accomplish, and I started that plan. Actually, in fact, I wrote a book, and it's called Dreams, Goals, and Adventure.
Aloha, and welcome to Deal or No Deal, Multifamily Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Michael Ditton. Our mission and vision for this podcast is to share the knowledge and stories of others to inspire and motivate those not only in their pursuit for success in real estate investing, but in their overall journey in a life adventure, and to help create abundance on every level of their life. This podcast is sponsored by Helios Capital Investments, shedding light on multifamily real estate investing. Aloha, everybody, and welcome to Deal or No Deal, Multifamily Real Estate Investing Podcast. And today, before I get to introduce a very special guest and close personal friend of mine, I just want to remind everybody why we're here. And this podcast is designed based on our mission, which is our vision is to share the knowledge and stories of others that will inspire and motivate those not only in the real estate industry, and Mike and I were just talking about that, but in their overall journey in their life's adventures, and to help create abundance on every level. So today, my guest, we go a long ways back. I can't remember exactly when we first met. I know that I started going to the Brendan Broussard's or tied to Brendan Broussard's events probably back in 2016. And I think it might have been a year or so after that in maybe Santa Clara where I met Mike. And I'll give you a little story on how we met Mike, because even though we had talked to him on various occasions, we actually didn't really get to know him until a couple of years after that. So Mike is a personal friend of mine. He's a coach. He's a mentor. I jumped into his mastery program. I believe it was October of 2020. Learned a ton, met a great group of people to, associate myself with, built a lot of relationships and that from there. Mike not only loves investing in real estate, which we're going to talk a little bit about, but he loves teaching real estate. And one of the things that I really like about, when you look at Mike and his history, he likes helping people realize their dreams of creating both time, location, and financial freedom. And in fact, in part of what he talks about in his life journey is a freedom lifestyle. And we'll talk about a little bit about that as well. And in this freedom lifestyle and teaching strategies, part of this, or most of this, is actually done through passive income, which is why we're here today. Mike believes that you should also love what you do. And I do believe that as well, because if you're pursuing your passion, not only are you going to be a whole lot happier in life, but you're going to probably do it much better. And that's very, infectious. And it creates that ripple effect, which Mike has been doing with his students and friends and everything else. And I'm not going to go into Mike's story too much, but one of the things that when I say, hey, do you know Mike Wolf? People go, okay, Mike Wolf, Mike considers himself one of the wealthiest homeless Canadians. I don't know if he canned himself with that or somebody else did it. And part of the reason why he's got this name is, I'll tell you, in the real estate industry, which is decades worth of knowledge, hard work, and everything else, I know just in Atlanta alone, and the numbers may not be 100% accurate, but I know I'm within reach here. I believe it was over 1,600 homes bought and sold within that area. And of course, that is just a touch of the real estate world that he's been involved in and the impact that he's had. And that impact not only is of financial wealth, but beyond that, the wealth that he's been able to spread out through that ripple effect to many, many other people. So, Mike, I would like for you to tell a little bit about your story. And when you feel that it's a good point to put that in there, we talked a little bit about that freedom lifestyle. I want you to explain what that freedom lifestyle feels like, because that's what you're teaching for other people and that's what you're living. So share your story and then bring in that freedom lifestyle and explain to people just how good it feels and why they should be doing this.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here and great to see you as always. And, I actually love telling my story of how I got into real estate in the first place, because a lot of people think I had this vision and I knew exactly what I was going to build. And I meet so many people that are on the fence. Should I get started in real estate? Should I not? When I first started, I had to actually know real estate investing wasn't even on my radar. I was actually, living my parents' dream for me, and that was going to law school. I got my first degree, and with that came a whole bunch of student loans. And I thought, well, before I go get my second degree, I want to pay these things off. I don't want all this debt over my head when I'm done school. And so I got a job at the phone company, and back then it was union, it was government run, paid really well. And while I was there, I actually bought my first home to live in. And I had to be creative because I didn't really have a down payment back then. Luckily, I did have good credit and I qualified for a mortgage, although now I know that even if I had bad credit, I could have got into real estate. But I didn't know that 33 years ago. But anyway, shortly after I bought my home to live in, my mortgage broker calls me up and goes, Mike, if you want, you're making good money. I can get you another mortgage if you want to buy a second property. And to me, that was like the weirdest thing I had ever heard at that time. It's like, I'm a single guy by myself. Why would I want a second property? And he goes, well, Mike, you buy it, you put a tenant in there, they're going to pay for your mortgage for you. They're going to pay the property taxes. They're going to pay the insurance, and everything left over after that, that's all yours to spend or reinvest. But more importantly, eventually that home gets paid off. And when that happens, everything you get after that is gravy. So that's your retirement. I go, okay, well, that kind of makes sense. I didn't really fully grasp the concept, but it kind of made sense to me intuitively. And so I did that. I bought another home very close to the one I lived in, because my only due diligence that I knew how to do back in those days was, hey, I want to get something that looks pretty and I want to get something close to home. So it's super quick to pick up my rent checks every month. And that was my due diligence. And so I got really lucky in that a couple of years after I bought that second property, the market took off. I was still at the phone company. I was still at the phone company working on paying off my student loans. And the market, I remember one day sitting at my desk at the phone company and looking at how much my property had appreciated. And I realized that, hey, in the last 2 years, I made this much in real estate and I only made this much working for the phone company. And working for the phone company, I was working 40 hours a week. And the real estate, I really did nothing except for once a month, I went and picked up a check. And that was kind of the first time in my life where I really knew what I wanted to do. It wasn't my parents' dream for me. It wasn't anybody else's dream. It was just, this epiphany, this light bulb went off in my head. It's like, this is what I want to do every day. Now, of course, part of it was greed. Part of it was, hey, I just had this big a chunk of equity. But I did what any other probably guy in his mid-20s would do at that point. And I quickly quit my job at the phone company. Don't do that, by the way. Don't quit your job right away, because I forgot, hey, now I don't qualify for the mortgages anymore. And then I also told my mother, who was driving me crazy. Like, I told her, I just found something I love. I'm going to be a real estate investor. And she was freaking on me. She was going, Mike, you get your second degree, so you have something to fall back on. After you've got that degree, do whatever you want, but get that degree. And I go, Mom, don't worry, I've got this. And those were famous, not so famous, not such good last words, because shortly after that, as I mentioned, I didn't really know any due diligence. I had gotten lucky, but especially being in your mid-20s and all of a sudden you got this chunk of cash, my ego got the best of me. And I thought I knew everything there was to know about real estate, even though the only reason I made money is because I happened to get lucky with the market. I didn't even try to time the market. I just got in as soon as I could get that mortgage. And so anyway, to make a long story short, the next deal was a disaster because you got to remember that first one I got in, I basically got in and that was meant to be like a 25 or 30 year. That was my retirement. That was meant to be a long-term hold. And then I realized after I quit my job, hey, I can't wait 25 or 30 years or even 2 years for my next paycheck. I got to keep some cash flow coming in. And so I decided I was going to flip homes, which is a much different animal than buying and holding. So anyway, to make a long story short, my next deal was a disaster. I lost a lot of my profits from my initial investment. And it was mostly because I couldn't really tell my mother she was right. I should have listened to her, got that second degree. I couldn't tell her that she was right and that I was not God's gift to real estate investing. And so that's what kept me in the game. I really didn't want to tell her that she was correct and I was wrong. It was way too tough on my ego. So I basically had no choice. I actually did what I should have done in the first place. And I hired a mentor. I found somebody who was successfully already flipping homes in my market. And I basically said, hey, I've got a little bit of cash left. I'm willing to pay you, but I need you to show me everything. One, what I did wrong on this last deal and everything I need to do to make sure that my next deal is a success, because otherwise I am out of the game. And so one of the things that I love, and you mentioned that we met at Brendan Burchard, one of my favorite sayings of his is the time to get the map is before you go into the woods. And nothing could be more true. If I would have gotten the mentor early on, well, anyway, I'm not going to complain. I'm super grateful for where this has led me. So to answer your first question, that's how I got in. The reason I love sharing that story is because a lot of people come to me and they obviously have an interest in real estate, or they wouldn't start a conversation with me in the first place. And they think, oh, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I don't know if I'm this or I'm that. And it's like, I didn't even have it on my radar to be a real estate investor. I fell into it by mistake. And here I am 33 years later, still loving it. And so I think if you are on the fence of starting, now's a great time to jump in, especially with what's happening in the economy. That's a great opportunity for investors to get in, but get the map before you go into the woods. Get your. I don't even necessarily like the term mentor's okay term, but I prefer Sherpa. A Sherpa is somebody who's gone up and up that hill 100 times, knows the quickest, safest way to do it. And they can just show you where the landmines are so you can avoid them. But anyway, that's the answer to your first question. The second part is about the freedom lifestyle, which I'm a huge fan of, because if we go back maybe 15 years ago and you said, hey, Mike, can you be on my podcast? I would have said, I don't know if I can. Like, I would have literally had a really tough time putting it on the schedule because I was a workaholic and I was working like 12, 13, 14-hour days. And because I loved what I did and I was passionate about it and I liked it so much more than being at a desk at a phone company indoors, it was pretty easy to fall into that trap of being a workaholic. Because when you have a passion for something, you don't mind the work. However, when I first got into real estate, I was a single guy, no kids. As time went on, I had my daughter, who's now 26. But I remember when she was young, I didn't get to spend as much time with her as I would have liked because I was literally always working. And anyway, if I could go back to my younger self and I'd probably smack myself and say, Mike, you don't need to work that hard. You need to work smart. And so once I figured that part out and how to do it, which involves, by the way, building teams and delegating and automating and systemizing. But once you figure out how to do that, you can actually, it turns out you can make a lot more money not working than when you do work hard. And so anyway, the freedom lifestyle to me is just being able to wake up every day and do something that you love. And for me, freedom doesn't mean just go hanging out. And you and I both love beaches. We both love places like Hawaii and Florida. I was just actually till today, I'm actually in Dallas because I have some meetings where it's snowing. But I literally left Cancun yesterday where it was sunny. And anyway, I have 3 kind of buckets that I put everything into that I call my life. And so to me, I actually did a TED Talk about a year ago. And my topic was happiness, joy, and fulfillment and freedom. And so to me, everything that I do is a pursuit instead of currency. And money is very important. I'm not saying ignore money. Money is extremely important. But now every day I wake up chasing the happiness and fulfillment. Happiness comes from sometimes being at the beach. Absolutely. I love travel. I love heat. I love sun. I love the ocean. That's my happiest place. But if you just did that every day, I don't care what your passion is. after a while, it's not going to feel fun anymore. If you love golfing, you do it every single day. I don't know anybody who can do that. After a while, it gets monotonous. And so whatever it is that you love, if that's all you focus on all the time, at some point, it's going to become redundant for you. So to me, when I'm chasing happiness, it's partially about traveling, but it's also about hanging out with, I now have 2 grandsons, it's hanging out with them. And I've got we work together in my inner circle. Now we call it the Wolf Pack. I absolutely love teaching real estate because I love to see people's successes. I love to see, how they were doing it before and how I can show them a better way just from all these years of doing it. So that's how I get my happiness. But I also chase fulfillment, and fulfillment for me comes from making a difference, and not just helping people with real estate, but helping people going through tough times. So one of my projects after Hurricane Katrina, I went to New Orleans, fixed up a bunch of homes, and brought a bunch of people back to the city that had got displaced by the storm. And that was one of the toughest projects I've ever done. It involved a lot of work because these homes were under 20 feet of water for 3 weeks straight. So tons of mold remediation, and you name it. And some of the stuff that we saw in these homes, like dead animals in the attic and people's wedding dresses covered in mud and their photo albums, anyway, it was very emotional doing that project. And like I said, we did it as a give back project. I wasn't making a whole lot of money on it. I had to build teams around it. And it was my favorite project I've ever done, because whenever I meet some of the people that we helped, you can't replace that feeling that you get from just seeing where they are now, where they would have been had you not come into their lives. And same with in my real estate investing. I always teach everything's got to be a win-win. So to make a long story short, to me, freedom isn't just about hanging out on the beach all day. It's about doing the things that light you up, because there's a lot of rich people that are miserable, and you have to have meaning in your life. You have to have something that lights you up every day. And to me, the freedom means that I can put myself in my happy place every day, which means that if I didn't have an event to be at here in Dallas, I would actually look at the snow and I'd head to the airport and I would fly somewhere that makes me happy. And I have the ability to do that now. And so that's the stuff I love to teach people. It is about making the money, but it's also about having a balance in your life. If you just have money and nothing else, and your relationships are falling apart and you don't have your health, you might as well have no money, because you're not going to be happy.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is, by growing and developing, even through all the different challenges of your real estate career, what it's giving you is the vehicle to pursue whatever freedom that is, whether it's sitting on the beach, whether it's helping somebody else, whether it's, being at Brendan's events and helping there, or teaching somebody. So if you do this and you do it well, if this is your passion, you will have that freedom and ability to pick and choose what you want to do.
100%. And you have to be so careful, because real estate, like I said, it can be very addictive. And once you get started, it can easily, I don't mind working an extra hour because this is fun. I'm looking, and you start to see the paychecks coming in. Well, I guarantee you that when I was a workaholic, I made a fraction of what I made as a playaholic, because as a playaholic, I've got teams and there's only one of me. So I was a bottleneck in my business, having a bunch of teams that are on the ground, finding the deals for me, and people managing the properties and people fixing them up, and all this happening without me being involved, allows me to scale to a place where I could never have possibly scaled on my own. And I wouldn't have had time to do the family stuff. I wouldn't have time to focus on health. I wouldn't have time to go make a difference on this planet, which I think is what we're all here for in the first place. And so sometimes doing something you love can actually be problematic, because we can fall in that trap of just doing too much of it and having zero balance in our lives. So I'm grateful to have the freedom, but also that now, I figured out how to get here, because so many people get stuck in the work trap and they can't get out. And I just feel very blessed that for some reason things just showed up on my plate, and I'm somewhat spiritual, and sometimes it just feels like the universe just kind of showed me the way. Whenever I got stuck, the right person showed up and said, "Oh, well, you need to build a team. Oh, you need to do this." And it just happened very organically. But I had to trust. I had to take off the blinders and say, "No, this is how it's done. It's only done one way." I had to take those off and just be open to other people's coaching and comments. And I've had many a Sherpa along the way for myself too. So.
Well, and I think if you're open to that, a lot of opportunities, a lot of doors will open for you. And, team is a key thing. And yeah, you can do it on your own. Yeah, we've probably all done it. Yeah, sometimes we have to do it to get to that next level. You know my story, but we're not here to talk about that. But back in the day when I first started in the mid 90s, I was doing everything on my own. It afforded me to take off in 2007 to take off and go sailing and do what I want. But I look back now going, yeah, I was able to do it, but I don't know how much more I would have been able to scale. So coming back into it in 2020 and really diving back in again, knowing that I want to scale and learning from guys like you and all the other great mentors, coaches, Sherpas out there in the world that I have been so blessed to surround myself with. I know the value of a team. I know the value of coaching and mentorship and learning from other people who have done it. And in the ability to do what I know I can do, I love to do it successfully, but be able to do it so that I don't take away, from the time that I have here and the things that I want to do, not only for myself, but my beautiful wife, Crystal, who is why I do what I do, so that we can enjoy life, so we can go out and give back. So it's very, very important. And had I not jumped back in with, you in that moment, or, gone down this path, I might've found myself back doing it all myself again. But now I'm super blessed because of the teachings, hey, get somebody to help you. And I'm real hard-headed. So sometimes it takes a little bit to get through, but it's a very valuable lesson. And it's one that, I've been able to learn from you. So I appreciate that. What I love about this open, podcast dialogue that we have here, man, I came up with like 12 more stories we can go and talk about here. But one of the other ones, and I got one main topic that we'll talk about, and we'll jump into that in a minute, but I want to highlight a couple of things here. I hear this over and over again from successful guys like you. It's what happened to me. Some other people that I've interviewed, it's the same thing. And I don't know. I'm thinking about maybe cloning this or making this something that goes out there and see if it sticks, but accidental investor. It's not what you planned on doing. And here you are 33 years later, very, very successful. I've interviewed a couple other people recently that they were doing something completely different in life. And, they were somewhat involved in it, but not really planning on where they're at. And they've become huge. And what they're able to do because of that is also to give back. So that accidental investor, I think is something that a lot of us, we don't understand. So anybody that's watching this right now, the point is Mike didn't know he was going to be where he's at today. I didn't know where I was at, the people that I know. So if you're kind of on the fence, like you said, or thinking about it, dive in, what would you say to that, Mike?
I'd say 100%, had I been more intentional when I first got started, maybe I would have come up with a plan. Hey, first I'll learn how to do this properly. Then I'll go and take that mortgage, buy a property. It happened to work out really well, but that was 100% by luck. But had I done that skillfully, and because I knew what I was doing, instead of, just buying a pretty home close to where I live, I could have gone without that stressful second deal that went really bad. And that second deal, had I been a little bit older, maybe I would have said, nope, real estate's not for me. Or maybe if I wasn't too embarrassed to tell my mom, it would have been so easy to drop out. But if you do things on purpose and intentionally, you have a big advantage over somebody who stumbles upon it. And like I said, had that first deal, if the market had just gone up slow and steady, I probably would be have me on here talking about law right now, because I would have been a lawyer. And so number one, if that is even slightly your passion, test it out. Nobody says that has to be your lifelong thing, although for a lot of people it does become that, because it's super fun. It's you get to help people. You're creating win-wins all the time, and you're getting paid for it. Like sometimes I have to pinch myself that I get paid to do what I do. And so that's the number one thing I would say. And I think also when you talk about accidental investor, I think a lot of times, like I said, the universe likes to put the right people, right opportunities, et cetera, on your path. And quite often we're not receptive to it. We just tune it out. We don't see, hey, and sometimes we're doing something where we keep hitting resistance and brick walls, and we keep getting stuck. And I think if I was meant to be a lawyer, it would have been super easy, and I would have just got my student loans paid off super fast, gone back to school. That wasn't meant to be for me. So sometimes you have to look for signs, and you can switch universe for God or whatever it is for you. I'm not in any way saying it has to be universe, but for me, I use universe. I just find that it tries to push you on the right path. We're all here. I think we're all here to succeed. And I believe that life happens for you, not to you. And so even if something bad happens, a lot of times that's a sign that you're on the wrong path, in my opinion. And so, yeah, if you have any kind of interest now, if there's ever a time to jump into this industry, it's right now. As hopefully we come out of COVID, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people in trouble. And one of the things, I teach this, Michael, is that I don't really like the term real estate investor. I consider us problem solvers. And the more people that have problems, the more opportunities we have to help them. And of course, by helping them, they win, and we also get paid, so we win too. And so anybody who's on the fence right now, if there's ever going to be a time like in 5 years from now, you can jump in anytime. In 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 3 years from now. But don't be one of those people that says, oh, 5 years from now, I wish I would have invested when things were good 5 years ago, because you're always going to have that excuse. There's always going to be, 5 years ago was better. Anyway, the best time to plant a tree, as we all know, is
now.
5 years ago, but the second best time is right now. And so if you're thinking of doing it, jump in.
Yeah. And I like that, we talk about that problem solvers because that's the way we think in that. And unfortunately, I haven't brought that up yet here, but we do a lot of that. And that's what helps make us successful. And I don't just mean monetarily, but in the people that we are, with our integrity and everything that we do, which draws people to us. And I was just talking to somebody today, and he was telling me he just actually saved a lady from having her house being foreclosed on. She was at like the 11th hour, and he wasn't in it for he's going to earn something from it because that's what he does. But he didn't talk about that today. He talked about helping this lady prevent foreclosure. Now, of course, she's going to probably exit out of the house and that, but she's going to exit out with some money. She's not going to exit out in, bankruptcy or foreclosure or losing, not having anything. And that's kind of what we do. And the market is cyclical. We're going to see, our ups and downs, it's always good to get in. You just have to be cautious what you're doing at that particular time. So, learning from other people that have been there, done that, like Mike, is key, because that knowledge that you learned the hard way back then, you can share that story and make it easier for somebody today. It's not really a shortcut. It's using, it's what we learn from history. Mike, you are a real estate investor or problem solver, and you have a history that you can share with others that haven't yet experienced that. Anybody that wants to experience that, they have two ways to learn, and that's to go out and do it themselves and go to the School of Hard Knocks. And I graduated top of my class. Or you look back at people that have been successful in it and you learn from them. Yeah, you're still going to do it moving forward, but hopefully you'll do it in somewhat of a systematic way that you can avoid some of those pitfalls that other people have experienced. So super grateful to have a guy like you out there teaching.
It's actually been my pleasure. It's one of my favorite things to do. And, as you know, before COVID, I wasn't really doing a lot of it. I was mostly just traveling and enjoying my lifestyle and doing a lot of volunteer work. And like I said, hanging out with my grandkids. And then COVID, I could see so many of my friends losing their businesses and losing their jobs. And I knew they had to reinvent themselves. So that's when I decided to start up doing group coaching instead of talking to each of them one at a time. That's how it all kind of was born. And, I wasn't really expecting to like it as much as I do. I thought, okay, well, I want to do it because I want to help everybody, but I don't know if I want to consistently be on Zoom calls and as I travel and go to different time zones, waking up at whatever time of the morning to do a call. But I absolutely love it. And I look forward to it. It's one of the things. I don't do it. The money's the bonus. It's one of those times where I have to pinch myself. I get paid to do this, but to me, it makes me feel fulfilled to go watch my students' success. It's like watching what you've done. Just that makes me so happy, and it makes it so worthwhile to have started it. And so it turns out that I love it. I always knew I liked teaching. I didn't know that I loved teaching. Now I absolutely 100% don't think I'll ever stop. I'll never stop teaching, even though everything else in my business is pretty much done by other people. It's either delegated or automated. The teaching is the one thing that does involve me, but I actually enjoy it. So I never really feel like I'm working, but I also keep it, once again, in balance. I'm not on there 24/7 every day and taking away from grandkid time and volunteer time and stuff like that. So once again, everything I do has always got to be in balance.
Yeah. Well, and I'm grateful that you started teaching, because quite honestly, you and I had a relationship before, and I didn't really elaborate on. I'm going to go back and tell a little bit of that story. We had a relationship before, we communicated from time to time, and we knew each other through Brendan's events and everything else. But honestly, until you started teaching and I got into the mastery program, which is where our relationship really blossomed from there. So I am going to go back because I think it's a great story, especially since I can look at the shirt you're wearing right now and talk a little bit about it. So when we did meet at Brendan's events, you were volunteering for Brendan, like you do for so many other, organizations out there. And I didn't know you from Adam at the time. You were one of the staff as far as I knew. And Crystal and I know the amount of effort that goes into putting on one of those productions. Yes, Brendan's on stage, and yes, that's a difficult job to have. And I know he loves what he does, but quite honestly, he wouldn't be able to do what he does as successfully if he didn't have a team to put on everything that's going on behind the scenes and everything else. And we acknowledge that. So we always communicated with everybody that was involved with Brendan's team. And we got to know a bunch of folks there, you being one of them. And we'd go from one event to the next event to the next event, seeing you there. And then Crystal, my beautiful bride, loved the shirts that you always had on. And I still remember the day we walked up to you and Crystal says, "Man, I love your shirts. Where do you get those?" And truly, that's where the first phase of our relationship changed, because you said, I get them as I travel. We get them, Greece or wherever. And they say, "Oh yeah, what takes you traveling?" "Well, real estate investments." And it's just like ding, 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 lights went off in my head. We had talked several times and I really didn't know who you were. And all of a sudden we're getting into a level where we have something in common. Now we're starting to talk a little bit more. And you and I had talked about the tax deed event that was coming up, which I was going to go to, which COVID threw a monkey wrench in, and you started the mastery program, which I got into, and here we are today. So, it's funny how these things evolve. And I love it.
Yeah, me too. And once again, it's divine intervention sometimes, I think. And, like you said, we had met numerous times. It's kind of funny because most people who see me at Brendan's events think I'm I'm getting paid. I'm one of his employees, but I actually fly in and volunteer because I love what he's doing and how he's showing up and helping so many people. But it's very humbling to go help him, because I do things for him that I would never do in my own business. Like it's not very glamorous. I'm like moving tables, putting books in different spots, setting up the stage, you name it. We do anything that's necessary to make it easy for Brendan to go do his magic. And for me, it's super humbling because once again, I do stuff that I haven't done for myself in a long, long time. Back when I first started, I used to be a lot more hands-on and do those things because they need to be done. But secondly, it also makes me appreciate so much the people on my team that make my life possible, my business possible. And it just gives me an extra, I already appreciate them a lot, but it just takes it to a whole new level because I know how hard they work day in and day out while I'm doing my thing. And so I love doing it. I've flown in from as far away as Australia to help them, because if I commit to it, I put that date on my calendar. It doesn't matter where I am in the world, I will always be there. And that once again comes back to the freedom lifestyle, having the means to be able to do that and not having to miss. I think probably in the last 10 years, I missed maybe one event, maybe one. I don't even know if I missed one. Of course, he isn't doing any because of COVID, but when he was, I think maybe there was one I had to leave early. But in any case, to me, that's a priority. And that goes for that's in my fulfillment bucket. But it also adds to my happiness bucket because it's a reunion with a whole bunch of people that I've met over the years, like yourself, that keep coming back. And so I do it to help him, obviously, but it makes me feel great. And I built so many of my best friends came from volunteering there. And so, but I'm so grateful that I met you and your amazing wife, and I'm sure we'll be friends forever now.
Yeah. Well, even though I can't wait until the next Brennan event so we can meet there, the opportunities to meet more often are definitely out there. So, we were just talking about that just before the show. So that'll come up. I just got one other thing that I have to ask before we jump into kind of the main topic here. I've heard this from a lot of Canadians. Is it kind of a standard for everybody to go to work at the phone company? Because, my mom is Canadian and she also worked at the phone company. And I've talked to several other people that have worked at the phone company. So my mother being from Newfoundland, and she worked at the phone company.
Oh, wow.
She spent some time at the phone company before she came over onto this side and met my dad, and here we are today. So.
Well, I think working at the phone company inspires you to not want to be in the corporate world very long, to be honest. At the time, I was extremely grateful for that job because I had come straight from university where, of course, was making zero. And then all of a sudden I've got a union job, which then was also government. So paid well and the benefits were good and all that.
She said the same.
But I can say that I learned pretty early on that the corporate world isn't for me. And then as a result, I also was starting to think, I don't know if I want to be a lawyer and stuck in an office all day. And, but it's kind of funny because another one of my good friends, her name is Shelly. She worked for the phone company and now she's a very successful investor too.
I know. Yeah, I know Shelly. Yeah.
So
that's cool. See what I mean?
So I think if you want to be a successful real estate investor, that will definitely help. I think getting into the corporate world in any way, shape, or form, either you're cut out for it or you're not. And if you're not, you're quickly going to figure out a way to be an entrepreneur because, like, to me, going and punching a clock and being told what time I can eat my lunch, like that feels like kindergarten to me. I just can't handle that. And no offense to, I know a lot of people work in the corporate world, not in any way criticizing it. It's just not for me.
It's what makes the world go round.
Exactly.
Yeah. I just thought maybe it was compulsory because I've talked to enough Canadians that said, I've worked at the phone company. Okay. Yeah. I've worked at the phone company.
That should be the prerequisite.
Yeah.
But it definitely did inspire me to not want to work in an office. That much I learned. And real estate just happened to be my vehicle that helped me escape from that. And if that wouldn't have happened, like I said, right now, I'd be talking about real estate law or something to do with the law. Probably nothing. The journey that I'm on right now would have looked so different. So I'm just grateful for whatever put me on this path. I'm just grateful. So
well, good. Well, we're gonna do what I call TAC here. It's a sailing terminology, which is if you're going in a specific direction and for whatever reason you get a headwind or something, you tack so you can tack back and continue to get there. And we're still going to talk about real estate, but we're going to kind of come into that main question that we brought you here today for. And tacking is pretty much common in anything we do. We learned, like, when you realize that one deal wasn't working the way it was supposed to, you learn to tack. And by doing that, you learn what to do, what not to do, and it helped make you successful in this career. Today, this tack right here wants to take us to, you and I talked about this beforehand, the top strategies right now for real estate investors so that they can go out there and make a difference in the world, not only for themselves, but the people that they serve. So what do you want to say on that? The strategies right now for real estate investors.
Yeah, well, there's obviously been a lot of changes. If we look back to pre-COVID compared to now, a lot of things have changed. So if you had done this interview shortly before COVID, I would have given a much different answer. And so when it comes to TAC, as you call it, or in the COVID world, everything's called pivoting. Right now, I think the top strategies that are working. Well, first, let's talk about what's gone on for the last year and a half or so. Obviously, there were moratoriums on foreclosures, and landlords could not kick out tenants, and a lot of businesses were obviously shut down, and a lot of people lost work. So coming out of that, we're going to have a lot of people, unfortunately, going into pre-foreclosure, which, of course, if we don't help them, eventually leads to foreclosure. And so one of my favorite things is helping people in pre-foreclosure. One of the other things, and I'm going to go in more detail in a minute, one of my other things that I was doing a lot before COVID and that didn't work during COVID, but now works again and will work even more in the near future, is something called tax liens and deeds. And for those who don't know, a tax deed, when somebody hasn't paid their property taxes in 2, 3, 4 years, the county needs that money. That's how they pay to keep their hospitals going and their police force, et cetera. And so eventually they will put up these homes on the auction block, and the opening bid is whatever the back taxes are. And so these auctions, because of COVID, were shut down for a year and a half. And one of my favorite auctions takes place right here in Texas, where I know you live, close to Houston in Harris County. And that's my favorite auction. And typically, let's say on an average month, 500 homes will change hands. They have both these tax deed foreclosures and also bank foreclosures. And I'd say conservatively, 500 homes will change hands in a typical month. Now, if you multiply 500 homes by 18 months that they were closed, that's like 9,000 homes in arrears that they are, plus all the homes that they would have foreclosed on had the offices been open to do that and the moratorium not been there. So I'm going to tie this all together by saying I like to do something that I call the trifecta of real estate. And what that is, every month there's a list published of people that their homes are going up on the auction block, literally usually 3 weeks later, 3 to 4 weeks later. And so most investors, they look at that list and they go, oh, these are the homes going up for foreclosure. And then if they know how to do the due diligence, which by the way, always make sure you know how to do the due diligence before you ever go to a real estate auction, or you will lose your shirt guaranteed. But most of them will look at the list and they'll do the due diligence on that, and they go to the auction. It's once a month. If they win, they win. If they lose, the next month they repeat. Well, I think a much better strategy, when I look at that list, we're problem solvers, right? So it's like, hey, these people are on the verge of losing their home. How can I create a win for them that also pays me? And so if we go back to the last recession, I had a company that I called Foreclosure Fixers. And with Foreclosure Fixers, I would send out, instead of sending out those postcards, we buy homes, we buy ugly homes, we pay cash for your homes, like everybody does. And if you do send those out, by the way, if you send out enough, you will get a response. But what if you were in their position and you've got the bank calling you all day, lawyers calling you all day, collection agencies bugging you, and you get something in the mail that says, I can help you stop the foreclosure. Well, that's exactly what I was sending to these people. And it wasn't BS. Never lie about what you can do to help somebody, because building up their hopes and then it's just bad. It's bad karma. So I hired an attorney and learned the foreclosure process inside and out. And then I would actually go, and two different types of people would call me on these ads. Number one type of person is, I like to say that sometimes bad things happen to good people. Mm-hmm. And right now, in these COVID times, I can't think of a time in history where more good people have had bad things happen to them. Like people that had never been late once on a credit card or never dreamed of missing a mortgage payment. Well, what happens if your business shuts down? Or what happens if I have friends that own restaurants? What happens if your restaurant is closed? What happens if you own a gym? You can't have that and still be able, for most people, they're not going to be able to make their mortgage payments. And so for people like that, I would always try to help them stop the foreclosure entirely. So if somebody got $10,000 behind, and let's say their business shut down, but now it's open again and they can afford the monthly payments, they just can't afford that big lump sum, I would go pay it off for them. Of course, I wouldn't do this for everybody, by the way. You have to be careful who you do this for. But I pay off the $10,000. They would pay me back in installments. I would obviously charge interest for it. I'd also do the proper paperwork to protect myself in case they didn't pay me. But I managed to help a whole lot of people stay in their home. I made interest. They won. I won. Everybody was happy. Now, there's a second type of person. And these are people, I like to call it the keeping up with the Joneses people. And they have a much bigger home than they should have had in the first place. They usually have a nicer car than me. Actually, now I don't even own a car, so they always have a nicer car than me. But usually have a better TV, better stereo, you name it. All their stuff is like top of the line, and they're not making that much money, and it's all on credit. And so for people like that, if you were to loan them the money, you'll never see it back again. So now you're just adding fuel to their fire, and you're just going to put them even further in a bad spot. And so for people like that, I do what I call give them a soft landing. And what I mean by that is I'd always make sure I left them in a better place than where I found them. And so even though I wouldn't bail them out, I would quite often say, hey, we can fix this up, get it on the MLS. I'll put in the money to fix it. I obviously want a return on my investment for doing that, but you're going to get something instead of nothing. And you're not going to be, you'll have some money so you can get into another home. Or else I would put them into one of my other homes that was more affordable than what they were leaving. And I do a rent to own for them. Or at the very least, I'd make sure that they had money for a damage deposit, several months worth of rent money for food. And I'd give them a little bit of credit counseling so they could, when they rebuild, they wouldn't live beyond their means. And so that's for me, that's the most fulfilling part of real estate investing, is helping people that are in such a bad position, they got their head buried in the sand and they're depressed and they're stressed, and being able to change that trajectory for them forever, hopefully. So that's the first part of the trifecta, is helping the people before they lose a home. The second part of the trifecta is, unfortunately, we can't help everybody. Some of these homes will end up on the auction. There's no two ways about it. And so then you're going to go to the auction, or better yet, I have somebody that goes to the auction for me and my students. And I don't live in Houston, and that way I can participate from wherever in the world I am. So these auctions take place once a month, as I mentioned, the first Tuesday of every month in Texas. In different places that will vary. And we've had, some of my students have picked up single family homes for like $7,000 that were worth $90,000 and $100,000. You can get great deals at the auction as well. And then the third part of the trifecta is something that's very little known, even by very successful investors. A lot of people haven't heard of it. It's called overages. And so at these auctions, let's say the opening bid is $5,000 and a home sells for $50,000. That first $5,000, that belongs to the county fair and square. That's the back taxes. The additional $45,000, that actually belongs to the previous homeowner. Most homeowners have no idea. They certainly don't want to go to the auction and watch their home selling for pennies on the dollar that they just lost. So they're not paying attention, nor do they even know this money is owed to them. And the county makes very little attempt, because there's a statute of limitations. Once that statute of limitations runs out, the county can now keep this money and use it for whatever they want for their slush fund. So they don't make much of an attempt to find these people that are owed this money. And so a great strategy, and this also works for people with little or no money to invest, by the way, as you go find these people and say, listen, I know somebody owes you $45,000. If you're willing to split that with me, and that split could be whatever you negotiate. I know people do it for 20%, 30, 40. One of my friends does it only for 40%. And she's, I think her smallest paycheck ever was like $21,000, because she only looks for fairly substantial ones. But it could be whatever you negotiate. And your job is to track that. You get the list of people that are owed this money. You go and track them down. Sometimes you can do it using social media. Sometimes you contact the neighbors. There's a bunch of different ways. If all else fails, you can use a skip tracer, which is people or software these days that are designed to find people. And you're creating a huge win, because imagine somebody was lost their home over a small amount. If it went up for $5,000, that means the only thing separating them from still having that home is $5,000. That's all it would have taken to get the taxes back on track. And now you give them $45,000, that's going to change their life, because the chances are they're either living on the streets, they have to find a friend or relative to live with, which is, for most people, it's very tough for your ego to have to do that, especially after being a homeowner. And so you create a great win for them. You create a great win for yourself. And even better, if you make lots of money doing part one and part two of the real estate trifecta, part three, you can just do it out of the goodness of your heart and help people reunite them with their money and let them keep all of it, or maybe take a very small amount for your time. But anyway, that is some of the stuff that I would be doing right now. And it works very well with what's going on in the economy. And that stuff is going to work even better as things continue to unfold here.
Yeah, because we certainly, and I think COVID at first had a completely opposite effect than anybody had expected on the real estate industry, because they expected a significant crash in the market right away, but that's not what happened. What happened is supply and demand, and a lot of, so many people own their property now with cash versus the last time we had this bubble. So we saw it really escalate in some places way more than it should, and there is going to be a correction. We're already starting to see it. That correction is going to be more dramatic, I think, geographically, to areas that sustained a much higher increase versus a place that may have sustained a less increase. But I did see, I was at an event, a real estate event in, probably towards the end of last year. And it happened to be, Southeast Florida. And I remember looking at Southeast Florida at that specific time. Miami was number 2 in the nation for delinquent mortgages over 90 days, number 2 in the nation. So we have, a whole bunch of these delinquent mortgages some of which the banks will work with people because they lost their job, got their job again. Banks aren't in the business of owning real estate. They're in the business of loaning money. And if those folks they feel are capable of maybe fulfilling that payback, they're going to go ahead and work with them. But there's going to be people that aren't going to be able to fulfill that, and the banks know that. So that's when we're going to start seeing it. So even if there's a couple million houses out there that are going through foreclosure, and only 50% of them come, that's 1 million houses through our nation that people pre-foreclosure we can help, or foreclosure where these things are going to come up for us. So this trifecta, tax deeds obviously part of it, which is a little bit different than the mortgage side of it. But the bailout process is pretty much there to help people, through this whole process. So
we're going to see the same thing, by the way, with the bank foreclosures as well. They're coming. They're reopening now, and they're starting to the foreclosure process. And so we are going to see that foreclosures of all types and pre-foreclosures of all types.
Yep.
So I would definitely, that's some of the stuff I would definitely focus on. And by the way, there's strategies, because I know some people watching this are going, oh man, I wish I had more money so I could participate in this. A lot of this stuff can be done with zero or very little down. And so once again, I wish I knew this stuff 33 years ago, because I would have done things a lot differently. But yeah, there's so many myths. Like, so many people think, oh, you need to save up a large down payment and then qualify for mortgage. Well, you can do that. That's a slow way of building your portfolio. And that's how I started, by the way. So, but there's other ways as well. And there's ways you can help these people, even if you're flat broke, and this will help you become not flat broke for long and help a lot of people. Like that overages, for example, is one example. You don't need a whole lot of money. You just need to get a list, which quite often is free. Mm-hmm. And if you can't track the people down, you might have to hire somebody to track them down. Like I said, there's software that does it very inexpensively. Anyway, you don't need a ton of money to get started. And there's a ton, that's just one example. There's a whole bunch of different strategies that work right now that you could do even if you're flat broke.
Yeah. Well, and that, that's why, through the mastery program that you have, and that's one of the things I love about the mastery program you have. When I first came into it, you had, I don't remember how many different coaches, but they all had their specialty. And Carolyn subject twos, Mike multifamily, and everybody within their specialty. Cal doing wholesaling. Of course, he's also big into the overages. You can learn what you're comfortable with, start doing that. But this is just, there's so much knowledge out there, and part of what I learned is, the relationships that you can build with other people that might have the money and not the time. So if you have the knowledge and time, you find somebody with the money, but they're dedicated to their profession, which gives them the money to be able to do this. It's a good partnership that you can go out and you can do these deals together. And that's, we could go on and on and on about that. But I think we've given them enough to chew on for today. But I want one last thing, because we talked about the freedom lifestyle. We talked about, some of the things that we can do within real estate, whether it's overages, tax deeds. I'm a big multifamily guy. I know you've done mainly single family. I know that you've been intrigued by multifamily over the past 12 months because you've seen, some of your students and other coaches come in there and the successes that they've had. So, that's a very well-rounded thing. But for you, because you've already been there and you're sharing it, this last question is going to be a little bit more personal. And what it is, hopefully this is no time soon, but when that day does come that Mike Wolf passes on to the other side, okay, whatever and wherever that is, but the legacy that he leaves behind, what do you see? I mean, I know what you're doing. I know what your legacy looks like today, but what do you see when that day comes? What is it that you want your legacy to be recognized as?
Wow, that's a tough question to answer, because that's something you don't want to think about too often.
Right.
Like, I probably only got a couple of hundred more years left on this planet, so I got to start thinking about that. I think the biggest thing is I just want to see future generations have it easier than we did. And, I just look at what's, some of the advice I got from my parents, and they never meant anything bad by giving me their advice, but that's what worked in their generation. And that was handed down from the previous generation. And I think there's just so much opportunity out there. And we're all raised to, okay, we're born, we go to school, we get a job. Maybe for these days, you don't get a pension anymore, but back in the olden days, but that's how life used to be. That doesn't serve us anymore. I mean, you can't depend on your employer to keep you employed for the rest of your life. That doesn't happen anymore. And so I think that you need to be a lifelong learner, continue. And I'm in Dallas today going to a seminar, even though I've been in business for 33 years. But so I really want what I want to leave for, like, I want my grandkids to know how to work smart. I don't want them working hard. I want them doing the opposite of what I was taught. And once again, nobody means anything negative when they say, oh, you should work hard, work hard, work hard. However, if you take that to heart, you become a workaholic. I think it's better to have much, balance in your life and, put the money on autopilot. Here's one of the things I like to teach is that right now I'm not thinking, oh, I hope Michael Ditton's not breathing too much air because, I hope there's enough for me. We don't even think about it. Because it's so abundant. We don't really have to keep track of it, even though it's the most important thing that we have on earth is oxygen, but we don't even think about it. So I want to leave to my grandkids, for example, not just, the real estate and the video training so they can go pursue this if that's what they want to do, but also just, I want to give them an abundance mindset where they don't think anything is scarce. There's nothing that you can't attain if you want it, if you're willing to put in the effort. And I think and also I just want to make it as much difference on the planet now while I'm here and build things that are sustainable. So they live on long after I'm gone, that they're still happening. And that's totally doable as well. And so those are kind of my biggest things that I really want to leave for my family and future generations of people, not just my family. And there's always that ripple effect. Like if I can help you get to a certain point, and then you go and you bring that to the people that you impact and influence, we can definitely have a really good trickle down and help the whole planet.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. And you're already well on the way of making that happen. Actually, I know that you have for a lot of different people, and I don't see that stopping anytime in the near future. And abundance is probably one of my most favorite words. And it's so misunderstood because a lot of people, they associate money with abundance, and abundance is so much more than that. It is the air that we breathe. It is the relationships that we build. It is so much more than that. So, and you do bring a lot of abundance to this world to share. So we do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And speaking of abundance, I don't know if this is okay, but I have an ebook that I think might help your followers. I'd like to give them.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I was gonna ask, how people can reach out to you, and of course, we'd put that in the notes. And yes, tell us a little bit about what you got there.
Yeah. So at the beginning of COVID, as all my friends were starting to either lose jobs, businesses shutting down, et cetera, I decided to write a short, easy to read ebook. It's like 25 pages, and just outlining, like, if I was starting over today, what would I want to know? What strategies would I want to use? And because when I started, I had no money. I was, as you remember, a starving ex-university student. What would I do today if I was starting from scratch with nothing? And so I put my top 7 strategies on what I would do and how you can use them using no money of your own, and how you can so it's called The Radical Real Estate Revolution, and it talks about the top strategies that are working right now. So it's very pertinent, and I love your audience to have that for free. And I hope it helps and inspires some of your audience.
Well, I'm certain it will. And my suggestion to the audience is to print it, but print it in gold, because it's going to be worth its weight in gold. So thank you. Thank you very much for that. And reaching out to you, a way to do that.
Yeah, you can email me, info@mikewolfmastery.com, info@mikewolfmastery.com, or you can go to my website, mikewolfmastery.com, and it's got a whole bunch of information on there. And check out my YouTube channel. I've got like probably 200 videos on there of information. But if you want to reach me personally, info@mikewolfmaster.com, and I answer anything to do with real estate investing. I'm happy to answer your questions. So
Okay, and we'll make sure to put that in the notes for anybody and everybody, and we do appreciate that. So thank you.
Let me know that you saw me on Michael's podcast as well, because I always like to know where people came from and how they found me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Mike, I want to say thank you very much. I was looking forward to this interview, not only because I knew it would be a great interview, but just getting together with my friend and coach and mentor, and just having the opportunity to talk openly like this and share these experiences with other people. So thank you very much for taking the time.
Thanks again for having me. And it's always awesome to see you, buddy. And I can't wait till we see each other in person, because we're way overdue for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am going to say thank you to everybody to our listeners and viewers, because this will come out in audio and visual, to Deal or No Deal multifamily real estate investing. And we want to thank a special thanks to Mike Wolf for being here today. And we look forward to getting this out for everybody to enjoy. So aloha, everybody.
Aloha.